So let's take a look at how grazing impacts plant vigor.
So here's a very vigorous plant, and right here is a less vigorous plant. And the reason it's less vigorous is probably it has been consistently, persistently grazed more closely. So if you imagine this for an entire pasture, you're going to have a lot less productivity out of this more stressed plant than you are out of this very vigorous plant. And then a third example of a very small plant, and it could be a seedling, it may just simply be last year's seedling, but it's a much, much smaller plant, but it's very typical of what will happen to very stressed native perennial grasses, is that with consistent, persistent overgrazing, the plant will weaken, and as you can see with this plant, it's really just down to about 2 or 3 tillers. This intermediate plant I just showed you has about, 50 tillers. This great big vigorous plant here may have as many as 200 to 250 tillers. So how we manage these plants makes a huge amount of difference in terms of their vigor and productivity.
Now here's an example of some lowland switchgrass in a pasture that's starting to get away from us. Not really a problem yet, but at this stage of development of the switchgrass, to maintain it in a vegetative state, we're going to have to be really aggressive about our grazing. And here's an example of a switchgrass pasture that did get away from us. And again, we're looking at tall, stemmy plants with a lot of seed heads. That gentleman standing there is 6'4". You can see the problem. Now, if we had cattle in there, they would continue to strip leaves and pick leaves out here, so you could graze it. But obviously, from a forage production standpoint, this is a problem. Let me show you an example from another study that'll help emphasize this. This is from a study conducted by Dr. Bruce Anderson and his colleagues out in Nebraska. They did a grazing trial on 2 varieties of switchgrass. I want to focus on this Pathfinder switchgrass because it is most similar to what we have studied here at the University of Tennessee in our grazing trials. They got very, very weak average daily gains, 0.59 pounds a day. That's not good. In fact, that's far less than we see in the studies we've done here at UT and that other people have done around the country. So why did it do so poorly? Well, let's take a look. This is that pasture during that first year. A grainy picture because it's a very old picture, but what you can make out here is this switchgrass is full of seed heads, and if you see these steers in the back, they can barely look over that switchgrass. Again, not good. So we're moving ahead to 1983, the next year of this study, and again, let's look at the Pathfinder. Remember, year 1, barely 0.6 of a pound. Year 2, 1.76 pounds, almost tripled the rate of gain. By the way, that's almost the exact same number that we've gotten in our studies and most other people have gotten in their studies. Another thing worth pointing out here is we went from a production of only 127 pounds of beef per acre in that first year to 331 pounds of beef per acre. A 200-pound gain, 260% improvement, and that's being driven by this much higher rate of gain. Why, you might ask? Well, that's actually a pretty easy question to answer. That is what the pasture looked like the second year. That first year they got behind on their grazing and the switchgrass became over mature. This year they got more aggressive and got after that switchgrass early in the season, and they kept it vigorous, productive, vegetative. And we see that that translates into better than 200 pounds of beef per acre in gain. And folks, that's money on the table.